So I'm going to kick us off. Thank you everyone for joining. So this is a casual conversation among Minnesota Catholics about the current ICE occupation of Minnesota. Just kind of a few caveats I want to bring to the conversation. One is there are a lot of Catholics responding to a lot of things in Minnesota right now. So we're just going to talk about our kind of limited experiences, perspectives, but there are a lot of other experiences and perspectives that matter quite a bit. So this is going to be a limited space, just sharing what we're going through. We're going to say a number of things that maybe people have different perspectives on or different dispositions towards, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. I think that there are a lot of valid approaches to what's happening right now. I think that there may be people who disagree with some of what we share, and I also just want to hold space for that too. You all are very welcome to comment throughout this. If you're following on the Instagram Live, you can comment via the little comment section at the very bottom. There were just a few questions that came in, so I'll bring those in as well. But just, thank you for being here. Maybe we'll start off with some introduction. So I'll go first. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Damian. I'm a Catholic writer, attorney. I do a lot of writing about my experience, especially as a gay Catholic, but also about kind of creativity, race, deconstruction, processing hard spaces in and out of the church, processing hard experiences that people have had in the church, and just really trying to help empower people to hold complexity and to show up well in whatever moment we're facing. So that's me. Laura, maybe I'll ask you to go next.
Okay, well, that was a really good intro. I'm Laura Kelly Fanucci. I'm a writer and a Catholic. I'm a mom. I have 5 kids, and I live in a northwest suburb of Minneapolis. I grew up in Flint, Michigan, and I have been here for 20-some years now. I have really been grateful to see everything that Chris has been sharing and mobilizing this week, and I think a lot of what I've been doing is just kind of jumping into trying to get people to rally to support Minnesotans, and also to kind of preach a good word, because a lot of pastors aren't doing that right now. So that's where I'm finding myself these days.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura. All right, Jacqui, who are you for people who don't know you?
I'm Jacqui. I am a stay-at-home mom. I'm originally from California, from Baldwin Park, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. I grew up there and moved here a little over 15 years ago. I met my husband here. He's a Minnesotan. We live in North Minneapolis. He teaches at a Catholic school. We have 3 boys and a little girl. She's at home with me because she's only 8 months old, and my boys are all at school. I don't really do anything in the public sphere aside from griping about stuff on the internet and trying to find the balance between funny and horror. And I think that right now probably the hardest part has been navigating everything that's happening, both as a Catholic and as a mom, and talking to my children who are young but old enough to know what's going on, and trying to find a way to teach them and guide them and also give them hope. So.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Jacqui. And I think one of the things that I want to highlight is, I appreciate that we're all here because I think we're all showing up in different ways and doing different things in this moment, and I think that's very representative of just community generally. There are some people who are literally protesting every day and having hard conversations, showing up both on the internet and then also in person. And then there are others who are trying to write and connect and think about strategic work to kind of move the needle in a number of spaces. And then there are people who are just trying to get their families through what's happening right now while thinking about what's the right way for me to show up. And maybe one of the things that I'll just open the conversation with is, Jacqui, you shared that your focus right now is your family trying to process this stuff. Laura, you're connecting with other people. I'll say that for me, I've felt very moved to kind of just get really actively on the ground and do things. So I'm in all the Signal chats. I've helped pack groceries. I was at a protest that did nonviolent direct action at a store last night, and doing a lot of writing, and then also a lot of organizing activities. So I have this document that has the 20 activity or events that you can go to every day, and I'm just trying to maintain that because there's so much happening in the Twin Cities right now. And yet, also at the same time, one of the things that I am continually having to process, and I think it's really hard, is just like pervasive feelings of guilt that I feel every day. Guilt that I am not doing more, gonna go out of the country for a vacation tomorrow, and I feel a lot of guilt about doing that. And I kind of thought about, do I cancel this trip to be here? Because especially this Friday, there's a lot happening, and I had a lot of conversations with a lot of friends, and it's also just been hard to navigate conversations with friends who are in different places. When I shared with a couple of friends that I was considering canceling my trip, and those friends haven't been as actively engaged in these spaces and things going on. And when they encouraged me to go and said, you know, you've been doing so much, there was this part of me that felt these feelings almost of like anger and resentment towards that attitude. Or almost like, oh, I feel like I can't trust your disposition here because you're not showing up in the same way. And then I had to like have a conversation with a couple of friends who have been really active, and they're like, no, you need to leave. We'll take a break. And I think it's so hard because I think everyone who cares right now is struggling with feelings of guilt, especially if you live here. And my personal relationship to that is to not just kind of bypass it through either like spiritual or some sort of like psychological bypassing, but like to hold on to it as something I think is really important. I was wondering, you know, would either or both of you mind sharing just like what role that has in your, like in the spaces that you're holding right now and how you're relating to that?
Yeah, I mean, I can start by saying I feel a huge amount of guilt as a white person who can still travel around with relative freedom. I don't know, like with less anxiety than a lot of my friends. I feel it as someone who's living in the suburbs, although that doesn't actually matter anymore because it's like I went to get gas this afternoon and ICE pulled up next to me. So they're everywhere. You know, it doesn't actually matter where you are. And I think it's also important to say too, like a lot of what people here are doing is not things that we can share on the internet, you know, like
Yes.
for a lot of what I'm doing, I haven't shared any of it. And I was kind of working on one of those things today, and my kids were like running around in the middle of it, and a need came up, just like a grocery delivery in our neighborhood, or not in our neighborhood, but like in our area where I've been helping. And I was just like racked with guilt. Like I could go to the store. I guess I could rally the kids and like I could figure out what to get some money. And finally I was like, all of the urgent needs are not for me to do. And I know that, but there is still that, like, the need is constant and it's so pervasive. And I couldn't do it. And so, you know, then I check it an hour later, and sure enough, someone else had signed up and they got the groceries and they took them where they needed to go. And yet it's like, I think that when you're a person of compassion and a person who's tuned into what's going on, it gets really hard to not want to do anything you can at any time. And I think it's just one of those, like, we have to keep reminding ourselves there's so much work. We can only do these little discrete parts of it. And I don't know, I keep trying to remind myself of, like, when my house gets really messy because I have 5 kids and it's overwhelming, I'll be like, as long as something you're doing right now has to do towards alleviating your anxiety about what's going on, then you're doing something. You cannot do 2 things at once, you know? So trying to do that one thing, it sounds so cliched, but I finally too had to make a list of, okay, I'm trying to do this at this school and this in this community. Like, I have to keep this all on my radar. I can't just keep getting strung out and taking on new obligations when I got to follow through on what I've signed up to help with, you know? So yeah, that's what I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Anything you want to add to that?
So I'm the daughter of immigrants. My parents are immigrants to this country. They are citizens here. I have the privilege of being born here. I also don't look necessarily as somebody who might be targeted right now, but I see these families and I think, like, one generation back, that's mine. And I'm also home with a baby right now. And so I can't go do some of the things that I would like to be able to do. And a good friend of ours, connected me with a family that I have been able to help out with. And it's one family. It's not even a ton, but even handing off things to her, I had guilt in that I could walk out and she couldn't leave the hallway of, her home. So there's a lot of heaviness in that, and knowing, like, I'm doing such a small thing, but I'm hoping that it, alleviates a little bit of the stress for her. And again, like I said, like there's so much that we could do. And at the same time, I feel like Minnesotans are really stepping up and doing so much. And I know that more needs will come up as like the enthusiasm kind of dies down a little bit, but it is heartening to see.
Yeah. I do think what's going on here is to a great degree incomprehensible to people who don't live here. Both the scale of like ICE operations and also the degree to which people are showing up. So people saw what happened in Chicago, which seemed overwhelming, and they're a much larger city than we are. But I believe that the Chicago ICE operation, we are 25 times the size of it. It's wild. But also, I mean, Minnesota. I'm in a mutual aid chat, and you can't volunteer fast enough. All day long, requests for get groceries, take someone to an appointment, take a kid to school. You can volunteer to fund groceries or to pick up and deliver groceries. And I have yet to have been able to respond fast enough to fulfill a need. I think I fulfilled a need to donate once. But I would say it is really hard because I don't know about you, but I'm just constantly holding these really intense emotions, both this intense anxiety and fear and a certain degree of dread, and then also just this incredibly intense pride to be in this place and, feel much more connection than I've ever felt in a lot of ways this community, while also feeling intense disconnection from others. So maybe, and we can dig into some of the parts of that. Maybe I'll ask either of you who might want to share, what are some of the big things that you're holding right now, and where are you kind of struggling holding big things as a baseline that you normally wouldn't?
I, over Christmas break, had the first of a series of panic attacks that I've never had before, really. I mean, I had them after I had my baby this summer, but I've never experienced it like that. And in my head, I felt like I'm handling all of this just fine. I'm reading and I'm understanding, and didn't realize how much my body was carrying all of that. There's, the fear for my own safety. Like, I had just told my husband, I said, well, I'll probably be fine because people probably don't think people think I'm white. I get that a lot, very bypassing. And then that day, I went on to 2 different errands, and native Spanish speakers clapped me right away. They don't even, ask if I can speak Spanish. They start speaking to me in Spanish. So I'm like, oh, my own see me, and they recognize me. What does that mean for my safety? So there's that. And, so I'm carrying my passport now. Like, I'm carrying my papers.
Too. Yep.
And I
good
wasn't...
brown person, yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't going to, but a friend of mine who lives back east, who is a brown woman, she asked me to. She called me and she's like, "Can you please start carrying it?" And it just kind of hit me like, oh, and and she actually didn't really know what was going on here, except that she follows both Laura and I. And so that's been her only insight into what's going on here. So just the idea of like, never in my life did I think that would be something that I would have to do. Even things like looking at getting our children ID cards, and making sure that they have identification as well. And the reality is we're probably safe for the most part, but it's no guarantee. They're not just, coming after brown people either. Yeah. I think the hardest part has definitely been talking to our children about it and helping them navigate social interactions that they're having with peers who kind of like rejoicing in what's happening.
Yeah.
And like having, a kid say, well, my classmate is nice to me and likes me, but I also know that they like, ICE being here, and how come they still like me? How come they're still nice to me? And it's like, I don't have an answer to that question, because that is the same thing that a lot of us are dealing with. Like, yeah. I don't know how to answer for you, but other than to say, sometimes people just really misunderstand, and it's not their job to make them understand, to make their friends understand. But I don't know. It feels like a very adult conversation that I was not prepared. Like, I did not expect to parent through this.
Yeah.
This is not what I was thinking I was going to parent through. So.
Yeah. I mean, talking to your kids about how their peers think it's fine that Trump is going to target people like their grandparents, right?
Yeah. Or peers. They have peers who are brown, and kids joke about reporting other children
that's horrible.
to ICE, and it's like, okay, well, that's not okay. You know, and we're taking measures to kind of address some of that stuff, but it's still, you know.
Yeah, and they learn that from their, I mean, you know, your kids are at a Catholic school, right? They learn that from their Catholic school parents. That's not random people. That's our Christian community teaching kids to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, Laura, what about you? Do you want to share just some of the like big things that you're holding right now, and then we'll come back to some of those other pieces too.
Yeah, I think as you were talking, Jacqui, I was thinking for me, it's kind of in terms of the parenting, I feel like it's that tug between all these big, important, urgent things I'm trying to do, especially in my kids' schools, and they're seeing me organize with other parents. And then also just like, oh my God, someone has to keep making dinner and laundry. And like, there's so much that with my own work, I just can't even tackle it right now. Like, I'm just firing off emails like, I will get back to this when there is not civil unrest at my doorstep. Now, so some things I can set aside, but when you're a parent, like, you still have to take care of these kids every day. So I just feel like my husband and I, like, just keep hitting these points of near collapse just because of all the extra stuff we're doing. And then it's like, oh my God, but we still have to care for the kids. So I think that's a tug. And then just the tug, I find it overwhelming to feel that disconnect between how much many people in Minnesota that I know, like many friends, most people seem to be doing so much and showing up for people in like big and small ways. And then the disconnect with those who aren't here. I mean, some of them are very well-meaning and want to understand, but the bigger disconnect is with the people who are just like, well, you know, it's paid agitators, or, you know, they don't believe it. And I think, like, you start to feel crazy. Like, it's that gaslighting of, like, I don't care what you've heard on whatever partisan news you follow. Like, this is what I see when I drive around in my mom car and I'm just doing my normal life. So it just does become, it's kind of just crazy making to try to hold all of those tensions at once. I'm struggling with that, and struggling with not just, well, I'm failing a lot. I feel like I keep coming on my own social media and I'm like doing the mean mom voice, like, everybody pay attention, because I really do want people to understand how urgent it is, and not just for the people here, but like what's happening here has huge ramifications, and I want people to get that.
Yeah, I think one of the hard parts too is that even people who care and are following the news and, you know, like want to be, you know, to aware of what's going on, you know, they tell me what they're aware of, and I'm like, oh, it's like actually 100 times worse than that. And I now some of the stuff is starting to get attention. But the other thing, too, is, you know, the most horrific incidents that we're aware of, we only know because they were recorded. And we know that if they weren't recorded, that the victims of those incidents would be blamed for the ways in which they were harmed, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think it's also very fair to assume that for every one act of brutality that you've seen and observed, there are 100 other acts of brutality that you did not observe, and the victims of the act of brutality are being painted as the villain. And I think that goes 100-fold for the people who are in detention. Right? And you have ICE as an agency that is fighting to not have to wear body cams. And whereas normal police agencies want body cams because they protect the police, but I think that comes along with an assumption that the police are going to be competent. And I think that part of the reason why ICE doesn't want to do this is because there is an assumption that these officers are not competent, and we don't want to hold them accountable. You know, a couple of incidents that I just want to highlight because they're really important and they are being reported on. One, there was a man who hit the news yesterday. It was videoed, and thank goodness that people videoed this because it was horrific. ICE agents broke down his door, went into his house, brought him out. He was wearing only boxers and Crocs and had a blanket draped over him so you could see him. They said they were going after a criminal. They go and arrest him. It turns out that that man was a U.S. citizen with no criminal record, and he was a friend of the St. Paul mayor, and rightly so. She was furious. And what I want people to really focus on is our taxpayer dollars are spending this big armed force to go in and arrest the wrong person who's a U.S. citizen. That is happening right now all over the country, and the only reason that you know that is because Minnesotans know as soon as you see ICE, you pull out your phone and you record everything. Mm-hmm. That's one incident. Another incident is the Brooklyn Park police chief just shared that an off-duty black police officer was pulled over by ICE, and they demanded her documentation, and she did not have her documentation because she is a U.S. citizen. And I want people to know this is happening every single day. Our taxpayer dollars are paying for it, and we're all here both we're terrified, we're furious, and I would say the reaction to Renee Good being shot brought up a lot of complicated feelings for me. Because I very distinctly remember the night before and the morning of thinking about leaving my house, and I felt really anxious and afraid. And I put my shoes on and took them off multiple times. And why in the world should I feel afraid to leave my house when I felt very safe in this community for the last dozen years that I've lived here? And then Renee Good was shot. And I had to grapple with the fact that all of a sudden, all of my white peers are finally entering this experience with me. And I felt so disconnected from them before. And in a lot of ways, the reactions kind of highlighted the disconnection of, now you feel like this is your fight because someone who is like you is a victim here, whereas this has been my struggle for the months. And so it's been really hard for me to kind of grapple with those feelings and also find ways to still connect with these people that I care about, to encourage the people who are waking up and want to get engaged, because it doesn't help me to vent my frustrations and resentments, because right now we need people to help. And that includes people who weren't showing up, that includes people who maybe were for this originally and are having their eyes open. And it's really hard to hold all that space when you're a brown person who's already been doing this.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about, like, my experience has been so physical in terms of the kind of panic, physical anxiety that I've had. I have one child who is a brown boy, and there were two boys who were detained last week. They brought them out. Oh, I'm gonna cry. They brought them out in shorts and t-shirts. They didn't let them get coats. And then they walked them out. My heart dropped for a second because one of them looked just like my boy. And I thought, for a split second, I was like, is he mine? And he wasn't, but he is, right? Like, those children are all of our children. And those poor babies are going to be traumatized forever. And I don't know if they're still detained or if they're back home. But I definitely had a moment of, one, just the terror of what it feels like to see that. And then I just keep thinking of Black mothers who have had this experience for generations and what that physical trauma does to you for generation after generation. Up here I could understand that, but to physically feel it has been a totally different experience. I'm very grateful for the Black women in my life who have repeatedly pointed all of this out and have been very, very patient. And I understand, like, it shouldn't have to happen to someone who looks like you for you to care, right? But I am glad that people are starting to care. And I have a lot of white friends who normally don't do much or don't say much, but have started to donate a lot of money. And that's great. Send it on over. People need it, right? People need it. People need the resources. But what I would love to see is these people to apologize for bringing about an administration that is just terrorizing so many people. And I understand that, like, people are taking steps together, but I feel like it's getting kind of urgent now. We need you to say something. We need you to speak up, and we're like courage is contagious, right? If you say something, people will also say something. Other people will say something and do something, and we just need more people to feel like there's a part of me that's angry. I'm angry that we're even in this place, but I also understand that not everyone is required to do this. But I understand that there needs to be a place for people to be able to say, I was wrong. And then to kind of come into the fold.
Yeah.
And I would love to see more of that.
Yeah, Laura, I'd be curious, just for you, I mean, what does, as a white woman, as the white person in the group, what do you see as pathways for inviting others in? I mean, I would be curious for you also, just as a white woman, what brought you into these types of conversations and exercising care in a way that shows up? Not just like I care about you, but I see this in some way as mine, and therefore I step into this.
Yeah, I think for me, the suffering I've been through has been the window that's led me into this. We had twin daughters that died shortly after birth, and I lost my brother to cancer when I was 10. I've had cancer myself. There's been kind of a heap of this existential stuff that has happened to me, and in my own reckoning with that, I think I've come to realize how hard life is and how we all grieve, and we're all going to go through these intensely hard things, and we need to show up for each other. And the compassion that people had toward me in all these different griefs and sufferings made such a big deal. And I would say in terms of showing up within spaces more of like activism, my uncle, my mom's brother, was murdered. It was a failed robbery at his restaurant in Cleveland. And when someone in your family is murdered by gun violence, like that was what galvanized me to get really, like, school shootings have just been the thing that I feel like I have thrown a lot of energy behind, because I think because I've been through all this existential suffering of like, I can't stop, like cancer and death from happening to people. So like when this other stuff in society is going on, I lose my mind because I'm like, life is hard enough. When we're being terrible to each other and these injustices don't have to be, we have to put our energy there. So I think that over time has been that and my own just formation in Catholic social teaching. Like I went to Catholic school my whole life, only really discovered Catholic social teaching at Notre Dame. And the more that has informed my theology and faith over the years, it's like, it's not like I'd like to opt into this. It's like, this is our faith. And the more I learn about it, it's like, yeah, this was what it was about all along, and people need to show up. And I do feel like as a white woman, part of my work right now is, because a lot of white women listen to me and read my stuff and follow along, is like lovingly and sometimes forcefully calling people out and calling people in to say, this might not be your experience, but you need to care about this, whether it's just as a human being or as a parent or as someone who's suffered. So sometimes I just feel like I'm trying to find new windows to help people see this is about you too. This is about the human experience. And so I just feel like it's been really clear to me lately that both for those who are suffering and for the people who are standing outside the suffering, it's really important to speak to all of that. So that has felt, like my urgency right now.
One of the things that when I explain Minnesota people, is I tell them, like, you don't understand, Minnesota has the most amazing old white ladies in the entire world. Like, Minnesota grandmas show up. I was at an organizing meeting with like 500 faith leaders, and they were talking about kind of protest activities and engaging in, peaceful, direct action. And the person leading it, pregnant white lady, saying, very similar to you, like, as a pregnant woman, I know that I can't do everything. I need to do what's safe for me and my family. But it's important for me to show up because I want people to know that this is among the faces that you are calling, like, trained activists. And they basically said, look, you're old white people, we want you there because we want people to know that these are the people that are showing up. And for a lot of Americans who don't see people impacted being people that look like them, seeing these people are people that they can relate to. And I just made this little joke, talking to this lady with a cane, and I was like, yeah, this is not the face they're looking for. And I was like, no, Trump's going to call this one a terrorist immediately. And this little old white lady with a cane, she was like, I'll go protest for you. And she was serious. And she is 100%. There was a lady that was like, if I go to this protest, if I bring my cane, are they going to see it as a weapon? And the lady's like, you got to walk with a cane, you got to walk with a cane. And she's going to go. We got, these old ladies are here, and there are all these articles about, like, moms showing up to patrol recess. There is so much, like, allyship, the things happening. Another thing I want to highlight, where you shared how, for you, a pathway in are your own experiences. I was having a conversation with a family member who was talking with members of their community who are inclined to be skeptical of the activism happening right now. And they are just basically like, well, Renee Good, if she would have just, like, complied, then everything would have been fine. And this family member kind of argued with that person others in their community, which love. But I said two things. One, I said, the video is very clear that she was not trying to ram down an officer. It was an extremely intense situation, and she did probably what most white women would have done, is try to just slowly get out of there. But if people are not believing it with the evidence of their eyes, nothing is going to convince them. The other thing that I said is the reason why people are struggling to empathize with her is because they don't feel like they relate to her. I think this is partly why a lot of news sources, when they talk about her, they immediately highlight lesbian. Because for a lot of people, that's going to be like, oh, lesbian, care less if they live or die. And so what I told this family member is, you can respond to these people who know me and say, your son Christopher said if he was in a situation like that, and he was scared, and these agents were yelling expletives at him, and he knows that people get swept away and detained, including a U.S. citizen who has just got out after being detained for a month because they wouldn't accept her birth certificate, you can tell that person that your son might have responded similarly. And if that was your son who had been shot, is that how you would choose to respond to me? I think it's really important to humanize these things and create opportunities for connection, because the way in which so much of the media drives this stuff is they want to paint things in a way where you can't empathize with their experience. Go ahead, Laura.
I just keep thinking, puts on theologian hat. I just keep thinking about the parable of the Good Samaritan and this idea of this person who comes to Jesus seeking to justify himself. And I just see that everywhere right now. All these, what ifs and the whataboutism. It's like, I'm just sort of aghast at how many people are just seeking to justify not caring about this or villainizing this or diminishing this. And I just think, I guess, and again, I think about mortality a lot more than the average Joe. So I do think about the reckoning we're all going to have to make. But it does make my jaw drop, because I think if you don't have the imagination, which I think is such a holy capacity we have to imagine ourselves into someone else's shoes, if you can't even imagine your own loved ones into this situation, the other reality is you're going to have to account for the things you're saying and doing and not doing right now. Mm-hmm. And to me, it just kind of makes me wonder, how much do folks really believe what they believe? Because if you get up there every week and you say in Mass that you believe that this is all going to come for you, and then you don't actually live your life in accordance with this idea that you're going to have to be judged one day, I don't know. It just blows my mind. I wonder what people really believe, honestly, but that's a theological side.
Christina just asked a question down here. We know her. How do you guys deal with the disappointment and lack of compassion in fellow Catholics? It's so hard to understand how we can act like Catholic social teaching doesn't exist. And that's been a really hard one for me. My poor husband has to hear me gripe about this, on the daily. It's
yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this. There's this guy who does pretends to snuggle with his spouse. He's like, guess what? And just starts listing the horrors of the day. And that's me. I'm so sorry. I was up until 1 a.m., but let me tell you about all of the horrors. Yeah. Guess what? Did you see? Because it's so much.
Yeah.
And this thing that really gets me upset, because I'm as Catholics, as formed Catholics,
yeah.
How do you say these things?
Yeah.
How do you just brush it off as we just need to follow the law? We just need to follow directions, because what that sounds like to me is you think she deserved it. You think that Renee Good deserved it, that these immigrants deserve the treatment that they're getting, that somehow if they had just followed the rules, this wouldn't have happened to them. And it really blows my mind, because as Catholics, we can understand too, right? That sometimes there are laws that don't align with what we are being taught is right and true, right? We can make that jump. We know how to say, hey, this law isn't just. It actually doesn't honor the dignity of the human person, but it is the law of the land. And so we can work, around that or whatever. It's maddening to me. And I've heard that talking point, and I've heard also, this is just about fraud. This is really just about fraud. I'm okay, it's not. It's...
Well, the fraud was all by U.S. citizens. Fun fact. Yeah.
Also, fraud in a bunch of other states. and you know, we can go into all the reasons of why this particular state and community is being targeted. But that's been, I think, the most painful part for me is, you know, losing friendships over it, and not because we've had like fights. It's I don't know how to be in a room with you. I don't know how to be in a room with you when I know that you think that this is okay.
Yes.
Because I think if I asked you the questions that I want to really know what you think, I think my heart would break apart. And I don't know how to maintain a relationship with you. And so for a lot of people, I've just kind of created this distance. That's been, I think, the most heartbreaking thing over the last 6 years. But more recently, it's just been really intense.
You know, for me, this is part of what motivates me to get out there and engage in constant peaceful protesting. Because when horrible things happen to those people, I want to drive a moral crisis for people that know and love me. Mm. And I want to be able to say, I want my family to be able to say to those people, if you're fine with those people being shot, you're fine with Chris being shot. And that's why I put my body out there, and I try to be smart with the risks that I take. I am very committed to engaging in peaceful protest, but I want to put my body out there so that people that I love, to hear them say, I would be fine with Chris being shot in that situation. Yeah.
I have appreciated so much, Chris. Like, I screenshot something that you shared recently. I think maybe one of your followers shared it, but just kind of about the bigger picture of this and the idea that there are strains of Christianity and Catholicism that want this like black and white. They want these clear binaries. It feels so good to say, I'm in the right, you're in the wrong. And I think at the heart of it, when I'm in a good place and I can be compassionate, I can say, yeah, the world's really chaotic. Life doesn't make sense. This is very hard. It makes sense that humans want easy answers like Baltimore Catechism definitions they can spout off as if that's going to get you through life. Good luck. But I just think like part of my deep calling as a writer is to say the vast majority of life is shades of gray. And you have to realize that you're already, all of us are navigating tensions in ways that are not clearly black and white. But like for some reason, these partisan talking points, and it just gets as partisan Catholic as it does partisan political, you know? People just feel really good spouting it off, and it feels so delicious to just feel like you're owning people with your brand of Catholicism. But I just think like, I don't know. Yeah, I struggle with that a lot too.
That's our non-answer for you, Christina.
No, I will say, I'll also say a couple of things. In terms of engaging people, this is what I've been thinking, just because I have very practical goals that I want to achieve in the next several months, leading up to November. And a lot of it is talking to people, and I want to talk to people who were supportive of the present situation immediately and are not unsure. And when I think about where people are, I think about people on a spectrum. And there are people on far end where nothing I can say is going to move them at all. I'm not interested in talking to them right now. Maybe one day I will be interested in talking to them, but I don't have time because I have things that I want to achieve. And where the people that I really want to talk to are the people that can be moved if they have better connection, empathy, understanding, if they have better facts of the situation. And for the people, I was talking to someone else about a conversation they had with their church group. And, largely conservative people in this discussion, which, lots of conservatives that I love. There are lots of things that I love about conservatism. This is not a liberal versus conservative thing. That just gives the context. And they were talking about what's happening in Minneapolis and about immigrants and documented versus undocumented. And then all of a sudden, one of the ladies starts kind of spewing these anti-immigrant talking points and talking about how horrible Minneapolis is. And, the person that knows me, they're like, well, I know Chris, and he literally is there and is talking about this. And that person just said a number of not great things. And my advice to the person I was talking to is, when you're in conversations like that, you don't need to shut them down. Let them let the crazy out so that everyone else can see what's happening and you're reaching everyone else in the room. Because the thing is, I think a lot of these people, I wouldn't say this another time, but I do think this now. A lot of these people I do think would follow like Hitler all the way down and just like accept the lies all the way to the end. Right? And the thing is, I actually don't think these people are bad people. I just think that they're so brainwashed and ideological that they literally can't accept the evidence of their eyes, which is what we have with the shooting of Renee Good.
Yeah. There's a teacher in my life who had a student ask, how did Hitler, even after he went to jail, he was prosecuted and he did all these bad things, how did he still become, like, the leader of... And he's like, I don't know. I don't know how to draw the line for you. Like, it, you know, and when people are like, how did it happen? I'm like this. This is how it happened.
like this actual...
is how it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I will say, though, part of me is like, I mean, this shouldn't happen anywhere, but a part of me is like, if this is going to happen anywhere, Minnesota's ready. Because, you know, it's not just that we're organizing, but, like, I think that it will go down in history as, like, absolutely incredible that there was not more violence here. Because we just have such an incredible, like, protest culture, and there's such a focus on mutual aid, and there's so much vulnerability, and there's so much intentionality right now. You know, obviously there are some people that are showing up in ways that I wouldn't necessarily. I hope it's helpful in some way. But yeah, I do want to get to some of the questions, and I think this one is probably more relevant for the two of you. There's a question on what can school admins do right now? Just a very practical question. I was wondering if y'all had thoughts on that as parents.
I mean, the schools I'm working with, what I hear is just that there are things school admins can't do that parents need to do. And I think
love that answer.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
like
Yes.
in many regards, even legally, there are things that schools can't be involved with. You know, setting up, like, they can't set up transportation in personal cars for kids. Parents need to do that. But there's also, like, I gotta be careful how I share about this, but, like, I was at a meeting organizing recently for one of my kids' schools, and we were trying to brainstorm other ideas because, like, the kids need to be involved. I'm talking, like, teenagers now. There are things that the kids can do that we as parents can't do. And I think that this is one of those, like, we can't always be looking to other people to just say, like, oh, well, how can we support you? It's like, you are how you can do this. So, I mean, I do think really practically, it's like kids need rides and families need groceries. And like Jacqui's doing, like, there are families that can't get to the laundromat and they need laundry. So I think trying to get connected with parent volunteer groups is one way that admins are under such pressure now. And there's so many things pulling them in a zillion directions. So I do think parents need to step up, grandparents, alums of whatever school you're in. There's just so much need in the schools.
Laura mentioned, I was connected with a family via a social worker who works with a school and was able to help this family out with their laundry and will be for the foreseeable future. And let me tell you, this, as someone who does laundry on the live long day, it was very humbling to fold clothes of children who I do not know and figure out, like, oh, they really like this character.
Oh.
And, you know, like, oh, she really likes that and he really likes this. And it felt very holy, I guess, to, like, just do this really basic work, but it's one less thing for that mom to do too, you know?
Yeah.
I'm sure she would love to be able to go out and do her own laundry, but something that I've done is writing carefully to admin and letting them know things that, you know, because my kids relay things to me, and sometimes they don't understand how significant a situation was, an interaction was, and so I then relay it to the admin at the school. At this point, I'm just kind of like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Now, public school kid here in a not great city near LA, we had a lot of problems. I mean, there was fights and people were beat and it was crazy times. But one thing my school did, actually my middle school and my high school did, when there was like a cultural problem in a grade or in the general school population, we would have like emergency assemblies. And they would gather all of, you know, the kids, and we didn't always know who was about. Sometimes we did because so many people were involved in it. And they addressed the student population about it. And that's something I wish, you know, schools that aren't directly affected by ICE, like if you have a student body that's not directly affected by ICE, I wish those other schools would then talk to their students about, especially Catholic schools, like talk to their students about the need to be compassionate and generous and caring, and find ways for those students to do something, pack boxes, bring groceries in, and not just, you know, like, here's some toothpaste and toothbrushes, or here's some mittens, but actually have them go in and pack some of these things up, you know, and come into Minneapolis and do it. Having grown up where I did, it was predominantly Latin American, and we had, I think the next group was Filipino, and then Black, and we had like our token white person, or we had two. I had like a couple white friends. I didn't realize like, you know, how people viewed our community. And when I moved here, I lived in St. Paul for school, and when my husband and I were shopping for a house, the house we ended up buying was in North Minneapolis. And I didn't realize like the stigma that it carried, and the reputation that it had, until I would start to tell people like, oh, where'd you buy? Like, oh, in, you know, North Minneapolis. And you would just see this look come down their face.
I totally get that. My first house was in Frogtown, and now I'm in
Yeah.
North.
Yeah, you did it twice. I think people, what's the word? They underestimate the bonds of the communities that are here.
Yeah.
Oh, some.
Also, will say, if you're a school administrator here who's asked, like, what can I do? My very strong suspicion is you're probably doing too much. So one thing I would recommend doing is finding ways to rest and sleep and exercise and meditate, and take care of yourself. Another thing is, again, because you're probably doing too much, think about ways that you can invite other people into this work. How can you organize people in your community? How can you invite parents to take over some of the extra work that you're taking on? I will say, educators here, amazing. I mean, educators everywhere are underpaid, but they're underpaid doing long, hard jobs and then spending all of their evenings packing and delivering groceries. I know an educator that's doing that here. So if you're an educator, first of all, thank you so much for all the hard work that you do. Probably the extra hard work that you're doing right now. I would recommend rest and invite other people in. I'm going to take some more questions. Someone's asking, what are the prayer practices guiding you through this time? And I'll share a little bit about some of my thoughts here, and you're welcome to share as well. I would say that for me, meditating has been really important because there's so much noise, and it's been really hard to still myself with all of the anxiety and everything going on that I've been experiencing. In this time, it's been weird. I've felt much more connected to God, I think, and much more reliant on having a faith, because I do really feel like I am being asked to show up in a way that is just beyond myself. I do not feel like it is in my human capacity to deal with the rage that I feel at times, the intense anxiety that I feel constantly, the like fear and the grief and the sadness, and also, to be honest, at the times, the like overwhelming pride that I feel in our community. Like, it does not feel human to feel those things with the intensity that I have right now, and I think that makes me feel really connected to something beyond myself. Yeah. What about y'all, like prayer practices or relationship to faith for you in this time?
Okay, well, I love how you're talking about that, but Jacqui, if you want to jump in and see if your mic is working too, I don't want to cut you off. Want you back? Okay. You good? Okay. I totally agree with that, Chris. That kind of gave me goosebumps when you said that, because I don't know. I feel like I've had so much hard crap happen to me that sometimes I'm like, could I just feel close to God in like a normal thing and not just like have stuff fall apart and then be like, look at all the holy here. But yeah, since everything, I mean, I was involved in before Christmas, you know, like this is not brand new by any stretch of the imagination here in Minnesota. So there's been a lot going on in the last few months around this. But since Renee Good's murder, I have just felt there just so much energy coalesced around that I have felt like you said, this real closeness to God. Like, I have felt this very clear call on my life to speak up and keep speaking up and not apologize for any of it, and just say out loud all the things I want to say, which feels incredibly freeing. And also I mean, this sounds like audacious to say it, but it feels holy. It feels like that fire where you know that there's something inside of you that wants to come out. And just this awe at what people are doing. When I see the generosity, I see people who are just showing up in ways that they have never done before, and they're scared, but they're doing it. And I see that clarity in so many people's faces. Like, of course, I love the people that are just spouting off expletives, just like, can you believe what they're doing? We're not doing that in this state. Like, I just love those guys. But I feel like there's a sense of, there's something in crisis and tragedy where the ways that we're supposed to be living show up. Like, we're supposed to be taking care of each other all the time. We're supposed to be feeding people who need food all the time. And we do that in these like really intense moments, but it gives us this glimpse of like, oh yeah, you see? I always go back to that Dorothy Day story of like after the San Francisco earthquake, she talks about like how she saw everyone, she was like 8, and she saw her parents and all these people helping, and she realized all along that the adults had known how to help. Like, that's it. We know how to do this. So I do feel like that. And like staying really close to scripture and reading the daily readings, which is admittedly not a prayer practice of mine, but for some reason I've just decided I'm going to like spout out and preach about them every day. And it's been so good as a practice to make myself just go, well, I'm taking all my anger and questions and like just fury and justice to these readings, and what are they going to say to me? And wow, there's just like a whole lot there I did not do before. So I feel really humbled by that, just like as a nudge to, oh yeah, maybe do that like in times of not crisis. But
I will say a couple of things. One is, it's been really great to see like faith leaders show up. I think to your point, Laura, about these are things that we should do all the time. One of the things that I think will be great about this moment is the barrier to like volunteer and show up for your neighbor. I think the hardest barrier to entry is doing it the first time. And there are a lot of people that are supporting their neighbor for the first time in ways they've never done in their entire lives, and now they know what it feels like to do that, and the hardest barrier to entry has already been passed. So I hope that these like mutual aid groups live on forever, and that we all know how to show up and do this. And Minnesota, we are building the skills and the people to do this stuff for a generation, and I feel so proud. The other thing that I'll talk about with like faith communities, and this is related to the Catholics who are maybe not showing up or maybe focusing on things that seem like not the priority right now. And we can talk specifics if we want. One of the things that I really appreciated is it has helped me connect to other faith leaders. So I mentioned that I've been going to a lot of events and activities and volunteering and doing protests with a lot of events that are being led by faith leaders. Huge faith leaders that are so smart and that show up peacefully and can hold space and really invite people in and challenge people, but lovingly. And I went to an event where they like focused on like, we want you to take a risk, do something that's harder than you've done before, but do it within your own conscience. And so it was such a respect for conscience and not pressuring people. At those events, I have not seen any Catholic clergy. And literally, like, one event, there was like 500 people, no Catholic clergy. And I will say, one of the ways that I've reflected on it is it's such an honor and such a grace to be supported by faith leaders of other traditions who've held so much space for others to come in. And so as a Catholic, I feel shepherded by these other faith leaders in a way that just feels really wonderful. Obviously, I feel very connected to my Catholic faith, and I am Catholic, and that's who I am, and I show up as a Catholic and want to be a Catholic in these spaces. Like, we can say Catholics were here too. But been cool, as opposed to, a lot of our bishops where, if y'all want the tea, I don't have the energy to be going after anyone, but you can all follow Cynthia Fisher, who's been really into addressing bishops who are into selling pretty Bibles as opposed to addressing the horrors that are going on literally in their own community.
Yeah, I just think I'll just say that a shepherd who doesn't care about sheep that get beaten and killed in his own flock isn't a shepherd whose voice I wouldn't think a lot of other sheep would follow. That shepherd is all that I feel like saying about that.
Yeah. I feel grateful. I don't know. I feel so disconnected from like bougie Catholicism right now.
Yeah.
Which feels good. And sure, if we're being occupied and having the poor been cut off from food benefits and brown people are getting beaten in detention and literally like someone was killed in El Paso, and like, if you want to be on the Religious Liberty Commission and sell pretty Bibles, that's fine. I just don't have time for you. Like, it's a little bit, except for this one little bit of time.
Yeah, I feel like I always think about it as like my energy is so limited. I feel that so much more post-cancer because my physical body is much more tired. And so I have to like, it's like that spoons analogy, like how many spoons do you have? And I just don't have spoons and energy for getting wound up about what the institutional church is doing or not doing. I am so much more concerned with where the actual people of God are suffering and where people are helping on the ground. And I get so much energy from that it's like, oh my gosh, you read the Gospels and we have always had the Pharisees. We have always had the Pharisees. They are just, here they are. And so you just watch how Jesus spoke to the Pharisees. And I think that's the model for saying if people are wrapped up in their own important sense of religious authority, their legalism, I don't know, like Jesus came to fulfill it, not to wield the law as a weapon and bludgeon people with it. So I just don't put my energy there because it's not, I just don't feel like the Holy Spirit is not there for me.
The Holy Spirit is not there for me. Yeah, and I will say, it's been comforting for me. I think that there are a lot of people that feel frustrated that their pastor's not showing up, that their bishop's not showing up, and I will say, like, I think that's super shitty. Your pastor, your bishop, sure, if they want to shepherd to their, like, comfortable, bougie, white parishioners who buy fancy Bibles and sleep real comfortable in their beds at night, you know, if they're not shepherding you, you can be shepherded elsewhere. You can still go to their you can go to their parish, and then go to like Faith in Minnesota events where these like lady pastors are going to get up and say, I'm pregnant and I'm going to put myself out there and potentially get arrested because I care about you and I'm going to show up in 10 degrees. If that lady wants to pastor me, I am so gratefully pastored by her. And, you know, no, whatever. I actually do think I have a wonderful parish with a wonderful pastor, but a lot of Catholics don't feel pastored right now, and if you don't feel pastored by your priest, you can still go to Mass on Sunday and be pastored by someone else. Be shepherded by someone else. There are lots of great shepherds out there. Yeah.
That's a really that's a wise perspective. I like that. There's so many saints, too, who did exactly this. We just whitewash their stories quite literally, but if you go back and look at their tradition, there's just so many just totally badass saints that you can look to who were like, again, we're just like, oh, and I guess the church kind of wrote them off, but it turns out now they're a saint. We love them now. It's like, yeah, they went through hell. Their names were dragged through the mud. Like, they were persecuted, and we come around to right, but sometimes it takes us a long time. So I just think,
St. John Pagan was literally kicked out of her own order that she started. Like, you know. Yeah. Who I love Little Sisters of the Poor. So there's someone asking, like, any Catholic events in the Archdiocese, so I'm assuming Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis, that you're aware of, been connected to people online, but it's just not the same as face-to-face community, and the Catholics and in the cities are not really talking about what's going on. Yeah, so much in that. I get that. I mean, that's why I'm plugged into, like, Faith in Minnesota, and which I would encourage anyone here to get plugged into. Oh, Jacqui, please in the comments. I do think your mic is working. We can try in a minute.
Could you hear my child earlier?
Oh, no, we can hear you so much better now.
Yeah, now I hear you great.
Yeah.
The Holy Post has been so helpful. I love them.
Yes.
They're so close to Catholics sometimes, too. Like, when they speak about things, I'm like, yes. Like,
we love
that
it.
has been good.
Yeah.
And they're talking a lot about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I would say, like, you know, Catholic events in the Archdiocese, in my opinion, I really respect my Archbishop. I do think there are lots of great things about the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis. There's a part of me that feels, like, incredibly disappointed about how the Archdiocese is showing up, including in its public statements, you know, this whole, like, generic call for peace, including, you know, doing a little bit of the both sides thing. For me right now, my priority in my communications is exercising a preferential option for the poor in the way that I communicate about these things. And I would like for more Catholics to take up that. The struggles that ICE agents are going through are not the same as the struggles of immigrants and brown people. I'm so sorry, but if you show up on my streets with a gun and people are yelling at you, that's not the same thing as you breaking into doors and taking citizens out and accusing them of crimes when they're barely naked. I'm so sorry, but you're not having the same struggle, and I do actually empathize with what a lot of ICE agents are going through. I feel incredibly proud when I see members of my cities come out and talk to them lovingly and be like, I pray for you because, like, I really worry about your soul. You know, that is true, but I wish the Archdiocese would come out more strongly and would engage in more activity as opposed to, like, we're going to gather and pray and then we're all going to go home safe and sleep in our beds. But invite people and talk to the Archdiocese, reach out to the Archdiocese, say, like, we want you involved in Faith in Minnesota events. We want you to participate in the general shutdown that's happening on Friday. We want you to, like, give a public dispensation for Mass, even though, like, people have dispensation, but the statement matters. So if you're Catholic, number one, plug into other shepherds that are showing up, and then two, get on the Archdiocese to do more, because we have a good Archdiocese and we can be doing more.
Chris,
Right, and it's
how
also
would you recommend?
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
How do you recommend people actually contacting the Archdiocese?
Well, you can, like, email an Archdiocese office. There are many of them. Find one that's most relevant and, like, reach out to them. I would recommend, like, maybe emailing them and giving them an invitation of, like, I want the Archdiocese to do that, and I will help lead it. Or I want to organize this, and then get on them and talk about it, and talk to people about how they're not doing things, and if they don't want to do it, I do think it is, like, one of those, like, well, you send in people 2 by 2, they go to the city, you say, I want Christ to come here, and if they don't want Christ, you shake the dust off your sandals, and then you go to a place that does want Christ, and if that's not the Archdiocese office today, go somewhere else. I do love my Archdiocese, but that's
I think that's so true. I think that's yeah, same. But also, I think it's one of those. It sounds so cliched, but, like, we are the church, so I can get really mad about, like, and they're not doing X, Y, and Z. Okay, then you know what? Like, the fact that the fire isn't here about that is, like, that might be the way it's going to happen, is by me starting something. So I just think, like, yes, we can be frustrated about what's not happening. Yes, you should contact your bishops. Yes, you should encourage your pastors to be speaking up about this. But you are the church. Again, puts on theologian hat. Like, you, every single baptized Catholic watching this, is priest, prophet, and king. Live into it. You don't have to ask for permission. You got all the sacramental graces for that, okay? So you get to go be a priest, prophet, and a king. And that's actually what you are called to do. So I do think, reaching out, being proactive, and like you said, Chris, don't just say you should do this. Say, I want to be a part of this, and I'd love to help start that. Maybe you've got other people who've been asking, but, like, sometimes we have to be the ones that we're waiting for. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. There's some more questions. This is kind of an interesting, a little bit of a political question, and I'd be interested in your thoughts just kind of broadly, but. The specific question is, how do you respond to accusations of the left is overreacting because Obama deported way more? Just to respond to that specific question, one of the things is I participated in an immigration clinic with my law school during the Obama presidency, and it is true. The inhumane way in which we treat immigrants is not new to this administration. The inhumane way in which we treat immigrants is not a Republican or Democrat thing. It is the ways in which our laws are structured, it is the ways in which those laws are enforced. I do think that, I personally worked with children who experienced horror in their countries and had to fight as children for the ability to stay in this country, some of whom did end up getting removed. Every time I worked with a client who I thought was facing removal, I was like, oh, this is, like, actually a fight for their lives. And so there is truth to that. I think that, when I think about what's new here, I think it's the degree of callousness is unlike anything that we've seen, I think, in the history of these enforcement agencies. And then, two, the degree of incompetence is something that we have never seen before in the history of these agencies. And I read a lot, so if you want to pull out factoids and things, you can pull some of the stuff from what I'm writing. But just maybe generally, Jacqui, Laura, do you want to share a little bit about, how do you respond to stuff like that?
I'm always just like, when human beings are mistreated, it's wrong. So did you care about it then? Did you step up then? Did you protest and did you help those immigrants then? Well, no. Okay, then it was just a political talking point, so let's move on. But I also think I say exactly the same thing that you do. It's like what is happening here. It's just, again, I know we don't share facts anymore. We don't even have shared versions of reality, so it can be really hard when you're talking to someone who's just driven to not see any common ground or to see any common sense. But I just try to say, you can look at the numbers, you can look at the policies and how this was enforced, and like you said, the level of incompetence, the level of violence, the level of just, like, just going through neighborhoods. I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
brandishing weapons, pulling citizens out. U.S. citizens were not fearing for their own lives and safety in the same way that people are right now.
Yeah, actually, last year, 2025, was the deadliest year of ICE detention in the history of the agency. Yeah, I will say that. More people died in last year than in its history. Okay, I'm going to take just one more question, and then I will ask kind of a closing question. And so there's a question in the chat of like, what can those outside of the state of Minnesota do to help? Anything that comes to mind for either of you?
I think donating, so donations, and talking to people about what's happening here, because it's going to happen in other places.
Yeah, I think the same. I mean, you can give from anywhere. We all have the same phones. Like, you can do that really easily. You can pray, you can call your representatives. I do think when you have that distance, or if you have some privilege and safety in your body, then you can have hard conversations that other people in your life don't need to be having with people who are not safe. And I do think there's a lot of ways that way people need to put their bodies on the line, and one of the ways you can do that is putting your own comfort on the line, or putting your own, like, oh, I just don't know, this person's gonna get, yeah, you know what, and that is hard, and that's a hard thing you can do to stand up for the people in your life you love who can't do that. I just love like, this going. But I also think I'm telling friends now, like literally mom friends in other states, you guys need to start organizing. There's a lot of things I wish we had in place. And I had kind of done some community organizing stuff like over, but it was never involved to the degree that I am now, and to the degree that I hope will continue in my life, because it's like, there's just ways that the fabric of this society is unraveling, that if we could come together and literally just do more of this mutual aid stuff and identify the people in our neighborhoods and our communities who are at risk, there's a lot of stuff that people need to be putting into place now. So, I mean, I'm sending links to friends to say, like, I'd watch this, I'd read this, I'd start having these conversations at your school, in your friend group. So, yeah, I just think, don't fool yourself. This isn't just going to end and then you can follow another news story.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say just to add on to that, I recommend a few things. Yeah, on donating, so people ask specifically. So if you want to donate to a Minnesota organization, the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota is doing a lot of great work. They're really good to donate to. Catholic Charities does a lot of great work. You can also donate to a Catholic Charities that's based specifically in Minnesota. Twin Cities are great. Outstate Minnesota also needs a lot of help too. They're facing a lot right now and have a lot less support and infrastructure. I would say another thing, educate yourself. Do a rapid response training, do an ICE training. These are really good things to be aware of for if and when ICE targets your community, because ICE also targets smaller communities. It's not just bigger cities. And also, I think it's great for people to be aware of their rights. You learn a lot. These things are really practical. And so I think those are like educating yourself and others as far as possible, inviting others into that work. I'm with Laura. I'm like, a lot of conversations need to be had before November. There are a lot of people that need to be reached. If we want to make change as a democratic community, we need numbers, which means we need people to show up very differently from how they showed up in previous elections. And you know people in your life who could potentially be swayed. Talk to them. Talk to them lovingly. Be uncomfortable for yourself so that you can connect with them in maybe ways that don't feel good to you, but that you commit to doing because you care about other people, because this is about other people who are much more vulnerable who would benefit from your discomfort. I'm putting my physical body on the line in a lot of ways out here. You can put your own, lean into your own emotional and psychological discomfort and talk to those people. And then also volunteering. There are poor people everywhere. There are immigrants everywhere. Plug into a local nonprofit. Plug into a food shelf. There are people that need groceries. But what I encourage you to do is think about what's one thing that's a risk, that's slightly more risky than what I've done before. And that doesn't, I'm not telling you to go do something illegal or anything unless, you believe that civil disobedience is where you're being called right now in whatever way. But, do something that is a little bit more uncomfortable or that's different that you've never done before. That's what I would invite everyone who listens to this to do.
I was thinking about how Catholics, at least white Catholics in communities where I've been, love that line that's like not, St. Francis did not say it, but they love to attribute it to him about preach the gospel at all times, when necessary use words. I'm like, I would love everyone to give that up and instead use your words all the time. Use your words all the time. time. Like, you are literally supposed to be speaking up for this. And I just think the people who, like, I'm not saying everybody has to post on social media or, like, go confront their racist uncle. But like you said, if you're not doing one thing that's a step out of your comfort zone, how do you think it lines up with the guy who came up to some fishermen and was like, leave everything you own and everything you know and come and change your entire life? And you're like, yes, I'd do that too. I just can't go talk to my dad. Like, yeah, you can try. You can also show up scared, show up when you're not ready. I just think I'm trying to do a lot of that too. Show up when you don't yet have a plan. I don't know. A friend keeps using the expression of like building the plane midair. Sometimes in crisis, you gotta just say, yeah, I don't have like a perfect, bullet journal 5-star plan for how I'm gonna improve my activism this year. Like, just do something that's a little uncomfortable and see where it leads.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so I'll ask one more question. I'll give my response to it. It's kind of a specific question, but if you want to kind of answer it in your way, you're welcome to. I would be curious to hear from you, like, where's one place that you've found, like, beauty in the horror that we're experiencing? And I'll share mine, just a little bit of a weird one I've been really reflecting on, and actually you both are aware, because I brought this up in a group chat that we're in. So, where Renee Good was shot on Portland Avenue in Minneapolis, it's actually this, like, really quirky part of South Minneapolis, where right there on the street where she was shot, there is a gigantic shark sculpture. And then also on that block, there's a gigantic dinosaur sculpture. And, to me, this is also one of the things I love about, like what I see in Portland. In parts of the Twin Cities, there's so much, like, quirkiness and so much, like, lightness and silliness and whimsy. And it's so particular to those spaces. And it just really struck me that, like, in this place where something so horrific happened, it can hold both horror and tragedy and this deep grief while also holding whimsy and some, like, delight. And as so much of our community faces so much grief and trauma, and as it's all over our streets, I do think it's also important that as we move forward as a community that we find ways to hold both, like, the grief and, like, the whimsy, like the tragedy and the delight. And that we build our human capacity to hold these things together. It just really struck me as something that was, like, totally of its own and like, really, like, beautiful and in a really bizarre way that just, like, really touched me, and I just have been really, like, holding on to and thinking about. What about y'all? I mean, it doesn't have to be, that was, like, a very, very niche specific example, but what about you? Yeah.
I did another delivery with the family that I'm helping out a little bit with, and we had a really long conversation about some very sad things, but then, like, we're able to laugh about parenting things too. And I bought the wrong size diapers for her kid, and so we kind of joked about, like, this little tot, wearing these gigantic, almost adult-sized diapers. And to just, like, kind of belly laugh, like, with this woman who's going through a really hard time, but just to be able, and I realized, like, I think we both needed that, that connection and that time to laugh about just not heavy shit.
It makes me think of The Diary of Anne Frank, really, which I think is one of the books of this moment. Yeah. What are you, Laura?
Okay, well, what I was thinking kind of pulls together both of these, because when I took this huge car full of donations from folks on Instagram that sent all this money, and then we went and filled up this car with donations, and I took it down to a church that was gathering them. One of the women that was kind of direct, you could tell she was in charge, like, she was one of the women that was like, I will tell you where everything goes, she was running the church. And she just came over and gave me this giant hug. And she didn't know me, I didn't know her. And there was something about, like, the physicality, just like that embodied, like, to be a human, hugging this other human. And she was like, thank you so much. And she was one of the few people who could speak a little English. And so I could, we could at least talk about that. And I left there, and I was listening. I have this, like, resistance pump up playlist that I will put on when I need to vent things. And I was thinking how both, like, there are these basic rhythms of liturgy, like being embodied, people being able to give her a hug. And then, like, music, what a role music is playing right now. I love when you see these choirs that are like, going up, the churches that are singing. The brass resistance is the best.
Oh yeah, I
I
love seeing them at a
I
protest.
love all the drummers who are out there by
Yes.
the hotels. Like, I just think there is just this gorgeous way that art is showing up everywhere right now. There's beautiful like art that's just coming out of this too. And so I think this human spirit, like you can't keep down what is sustained us through all of the hard times before, and it just keeps happening now. So yeah, I do feel like I just got to keep looking for that beauty every day,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the horrors persist.
Yeah, the horrors do,
Yeah.
and they always will.
They always will.
But like it is always time for like art and creativity.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so much more that could be said. We definitely went longer than I planned on. But thank you both for sticking with this for the extra time. Thank you everyone who listened. We're gonna keep showing up. We'll keep finding ways to have the conversations that we need to have. Minnesota is not giving up. So for those of you who are watching, know that we're in it for the long haul. We're going to keep going.
Yeah.